I came into transition through the Heart and Soul group. So a friend of mine, Hilary Prentice, who's a long-time eco-psychologist, saw what Rob and Naresh were doing when they were doing the first bits of awareness raising, and heard Rob speaking about his vision for a transition project in Totnes. And she decided that there should be a psychology of change group, a group that looked at the inner aspects of transition. The inner aspects of transition is absolutely crucial. So, both Hilary and I saw that if we don't look at what's happening on the inside, a whole piece of what needs to change and a whole piece of the understanding about how people work when they're responding to difficult information, so at that point of engagement, and how people go through a group process of change isn't going to be included. We need to understand what happens psychologically for people, and also we need to create a vision and create a part of the picture of the future that talks about what it is to be human. What is it beyond what we do or what we make or how we heat our houses? What does it mean to be a human being? And that actually that's a part of it's a part of our society that I think we've really lost, is that sense, so that sense of what we are beyond just, our activities. So it's, we talk about the spiritual aspects of transition. So in the Heart and Soul group, we talk about addressing the spiritual, the consciousness, and the psychological aspects of transition. And when I say the word spiritual, people go, oh, is that religion? Is that what you're talking about? And it's not about religion. It's about what we are beyond just those other things, what we do, what we make. So we're not just consumers. We're not just people who do our jobs. We're not just people who drive a car or buy a particular magazine. We're also people who care deeply about each other, about our children, about life on earth, about the places that we live, about the beauty of the world around us, and who have a longing and a deep kind of commitment to creating good society, creating a society that reflects our deepest values of honesty and integrity and care and love. And that doesn't get talked about very much when you're talking about how we're going to feed ourselves or how we're going to move about, if there's less petrol. But actually that's a really key part of the transition, is to rename those things, to keep talking about them. So, you could say we're at peak oil, but in a way we're probably at the lowest ever level of trust. We're probably at the lowest ever level of feeling safe in your community, of knowing your neighbours, of feeling connected, of feeling kind of skilled up to deal with life on your own. So there are all of these things that we can get back to that actually make life more rich, more enjoyable, more, more safe, where you feel okay to walk out in your community, and an expectation that if you need help from someone would help you, rather than what we have at the moment where people are often scared to go out of their front doors or, would be suspicious of people on the street. I think the piece that I hold at the centre both of Transition Town Totnes and in the network is to do with a kind of deepening of that needs to happen for people in transition. So for me, the kind of personal process of transition isn't that one day you wake up and you have your end of suburbia moment and you get over it and then you're done. For me, there's a kind of ongoing process that happens, and it's been true for me. I've been working in transition for 2.5 years, and I feel like in that time I've personally been on an unending journey of understanding more and more about how I have been cut off from life in subtle ways, not in every part of my life, but subtle ways that the beliefs of our society have worked in me. And, through being involved in something that is so life-affirming and so much about coming back to what we really are as human beings, I feel that working in me all the time, as I kind of deepen my sense of connection with life, with nature, of working with people who believe in the things that I believe in, of working for something that feels positive for humanity. So there's something about that deepening process that often gets left out, and people talk in transition about the need to include everybody. A successful transition project is one where you've engaged a huge number of your community. And we had Marianne Williamson come and talk in Totnes a year ago, and she talked about the need for the people at the centre of transition to keep deepening. I mean, she talked about it for any social movement, that if the leaders keep deepening into what it is that they're trying to bring about, they'll go on attracting more people. And when the people at the centre stop deepening, it's possible that the movement can't grow anymore, because there's no more depth and weight to what's being explored and what's being said to pull in more people at the edges. And it's quite an esoteric kind of way of looking at it, but I think it's quite an interesting way, rather than just having an anxiety about bringing in more and more people. Actually, that sense, people at the centre need to really deepen, and they need to keep going further into what it is. What does it mean? What is transition? What does that really mean? I think it's quite difficult to explain what deepening means. We had an event in Totnes where we explored it. We had a sort of fishbowl discussion evening where we asked that question, what is deepening and how do you do it? And one of the things that was really interesting was for how many people times of deepening and shift in their life followed a crisis. And that's one of the... it's one of the things that you see, for instance, working as a psychotherapist, is that crises are enormous times of growth for most people. And, if I reflect on my life, that's certainly been true for me. So there's something in this time of crisis that creates an opportunity for huge growth and shift in how we are as human beings. What I'm talking about is the collective rather than the individual, but I think it's really true, and we have crucial choices to make at this time, whether we respond from fear, whether we respond from fear that there's not going to be enough, so we're going to fight people for the less and less oil that is available, or whether we're going to move away from a system that's based on competition and, the power of the strongest to take what they want, to a system that's much more about sharing. And that one question, I think, is absolutely critical. That we need to really get away from that sense that I have to make sure that mine is secure and I don't care what happens to that person down the road, when what may be happening to that person down the road is that they're flooded out of their homes, or that their crops have failed because of climate event, or whatever it is that they can no longer afford to drive. We need to be learning to share what there is much, much more, and that's part of the kind of turning, this turning from one set of cultural values to another one. And I don't think it's true to say that sharing isn't in our culture as a value. It's just not kind of celebrated, because we have a culture that outwardly celebrates competition and individualism. So if we talk more about the enormous amount of sharing and caring for each other that goes on, actually that helps us to see that is what we're like as human beings. Human beings always want to take care of each other, And I think it's interesting when people reflect on kind of crisis times like the war, the fear is that in a time of difficulty, people will fight each other. But actually what you see is in times of difficulty, people tend to reach out, and the best of human nature comes out. And it's really worth remembering, some of those things, and seeing the stories and telling each other the stories of what's happened in disasters, how generously people give to each other when the chips are really down and life is at stake,